Hello there. Hujambo. We are back again with another African story. We tell African stories in a special way. As our name suggests, we tell our stories through the African lens. Afro-Lens Stories. We tell our stories around the fire, or sometimes under the baobab tree. This is Afro-Lens Stories. Join us as we go deep into Africa's culture and history. Welcome. Today, we shall narrate about the Yoruba art and culture, part 2. We shall cover the royal arts, the Ogboni society, the connection between art and Yoruba spirituality, masquerades and masks. Welcome. The royal arts. We highlight two artifacts that deeply portray royalty for the Yoruba. These are the crown and the royal palace known as Kafin. But first, here is a brief background. It is true that artistic expression in West Africa as a whole has changed across the eras, but the use of art to depict, acknowledge, and celebrate leadership systems has survived. At the apex of Yoruba's leadership system was the king, known as Oba. One of the prominent kings was the Oni of Ifa, whom we've mentioned in the previous installation. Oba was partly a god. He carried the utmost political authority. He represented spiritual leadership. When he died, he was succeeded by a person from his lineage, selected through a consultative process by the kingmakers, who also consulted the oracle. With the help of a council of chiefs, the Oba governed effectively. We proudly note here that the early Yoruba political system had women representation in governance, which played a significant role in decision-making. They also had an independent general who led the army. Let's now hear about the crown. The king's crown is called Ade or Adenla. The crown has the beaded veil to shield the people from the king's gaze. It has birds to portray the power of women who supported the king's rule. It also has a face or faces which represents the king's ancestor or Oduduwa. Birds are an important element on Yoruba crowns. The great bird at the top of the crown is said by some to represent the egret, the bird of decorum, a symbol of orderliness and settler of disputes. Now, when the king wears the sacred fringed crown, his being is modified. His outer head is covered by the crown, and his inner head becomes one with the sacred authority and power known as Ashhe of the ancestors. He cannot touch the earth and thus stands on a mat or cloth. The second artifact portraying royalty for the Yoruba is the palace. The palace is called Afin. The most imposing architectural structure in a Yoruba city, the Afin, is also the site of the most sacred worship and celebrations. As in early Ifa, the palace stands in the center of the city, and all roads lead to it. The King's Market, usually the most important market in town, lies at its door. An Afin consists of numerous courtyards of varying sizes, most surrounded by verandas. Steep roofs, once thatched, are today covered with corrugated steel. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, artists fashioned wonderful objects to enhance the splendor of the palace, record the exploits of the kings and chiefs, and display religious symbols and metaphors to the public. In making such commissions, kings historically sought the most skillful artists from their own realms and beyond. One such artist was Olawe of Iza. He is regarded as one of the best-known Yoruba sculptors of the 20th century. Over the course of his career, he produced doors, posts, chairs, stools, tables, bowls, drums, and ritual objects for palaces and shrines in the kingdoms of Ijiza and Ilesha. Between 1910 and 1914, Olawe worked at the palace of the king Bogoga of Ikia in northeastern Yorubaland. The Ogoga was probably familiar with the works that Olowe had carved for the palace at Iza and wanted to make his own Afin, equally magnificent. Among the works Olowe created at Ikara are 3 veranda posts that once stood in the courtyard in which the Ogoga sits in state for ritual and ceremonial occasions. Olowe also produced a door for the same courtyard. As a remarkable example of palace art, it depicts the Ogoga's reception in 1897 of Captain Ambrose, the British Commissioner of Ondo Province. We have now completed the topic of royal arts. Let us now proceed to the second one, the Ogboni Society. Yoruba kings rule with the assistance of a number of councils and associations. Ogboni, an association consisting of both male and female elders, is one of the most prominent. It is understood that the Ogboni organization serves to check the abuse of power by rulers, for the collective moral and political authority of these eminent citizens is as great as that of kings, royals, and officials. In the past, Ogboni acted as a judiciary in criminal cases and was responsible for removing despots from office. Although its authority has been diluted, Ogboni still exercises significant power in traditional Yoruba politics, and its leaders still control the choosing, inauguration, and burial of kings. Ogboni has a special relationship with Earth, who is seen as a deity. Earth is both the giver and taker of life, both mother and father. Earth as the land is the home of numerous spirit forces and beings as well as of ancestors. Ogboni connects those who live upon the earth and those who dwell within, acknowledging the omnipresence of spirits and ancestors, who observe all acts of the living and hear every spoken word. Ogboni employs a variety of art forms in its work, foremost among them being pairs of male and female figures. Large, freestanding pairs, placed on altars are referred to as owner of the house. Known in Yoruba as Wanili. Hidden away within the Ogboni lodge, they are accessible only to the most senior members. The pair is treated as a single unit, referred to as Mother Thia. Wanila perhaps alludes to dual aspects of earth, on the one hand hard, negative, and masculine, on the other soft, positive, and feminine. Normally cast in copper alloys, Wanila are created under ritual circumstances and prepared with sacred substances. Considered to have great sacred authority and power, Ashe, the figures emphasize the importance of men and women working together within Ogboni and in the community at large. Scarification marks on the chest of an Wanila chest indicate membership in Ogboni. Beaded necklaces acknowledge office in the organization. A cloth largely decorated with geometric patterns, representing a textile called a tagbe, may be draped over the left shoulder. And a conical cap would recall the Yoruba royal crown, and arching feathers, reminiscent of those that adorn the heads of kings. Let's look at other art forms used by the Ogboni. We shall look at the Ogboni drum, called the Agba, an Ogboni sculpture, called Eden, and title clothes. The Agba has a hollow, tapered cylinder carved from the trunk of a tree. An animal skin membrane is stretched and pegged at the top. Its sides are carved with images in sharp, low relief. An Agba would be part of a group of such drums, thought of as a family. The largest of them is referred to as the mother drum. The smaller drums that accompany it are likely carved with related motifs. Agba functions in a variety of ways. On a practical level, they announce the meetings of the Ogboni Lodge every 17 days. They are also sacred objects, and in yearly rituals the blood of sacrificial animals is rubbed into its sides. Because of its sacred character, the intricate iconography of this drum would never have been seen by anyone other than initiated members. What about the Eden? The Eden is an Ogboni sculpture that come in pairs. The Eden has the sacred power, Ashe. and so non-members are not allowed to see them. Eden serve as public symbols of the power and presence of Ogboni. They also refer to the male and female founders of the community and express the cooperation between men and women in society and the need for a balance of power between them. Finally, for the Ogboni society, let us consider the title clothes. Many Yoruba rituals that acknowledge advancement in position or membership in an organization include the tying on of a distinctive cloth. A number of such special textiles, generically called title clothes, are closely associated with the Ogboni society. Created by a woman on an upright loom, it is embellished with richly colored geometric designs based on natural forms. Although weavers of such cloths are certainly familiar with the designs and symbols they are asked to create, they are not privy to their underlying meanings unless they too are members of the society, for interpretation is reserved for those who have the right to wear them. The way the Ogboni cloth is finished also carries meanings. For example, in some of the clothes, the fringes are divided and wrapped with threads to create 7 tassels. 7 is a ritually significant number in Ogboni. Thank you for staying with us so far. We want to briefly talk about art and Yoruba spirituality, and finally close with masquerades and masks. The Yoruba pay tribute to many gods, generally known as Orisha. An Orisha acknowledged in one part of Yoruba land may not be known elsewhere, or may be thought of quite differently. Some of the gods were created in the beginning of time by the great god, referred to as Olarun, while other gods appear as natural powers such as rivers, mountains, stones, or thunder and lightning. Great heroes may also be promoted into gods as well. The god Shango embodies both of these ideas, in that, while he is the personification of thunder, he is also a glorified culture hero, the 4th king of the Oyo Empire. What are some of the common Yoruba gods? We list them as follows. Orunmila, the Orisha of destiny. He embodies certainty, fate, equilibrium, and order. In Yoruba belief, each person chooses a destiny in the presence of the creator god prior to birth. Orunmila can help people to gain knowledge of their destinies as they live them out. Through him, they can learn which forces control their future and how to manipulate these forces in their favor. Next is the god Eshu. He stands for uncertainty, chance, violence, and trouble. The god Agun is the lord of iron and war. Paradoxically, he is also the founder and champion of civilization, a maker of paths, tiller of the soil, and builder of towns. As for Osanyin, he is the bringer of healing, completeness, and well-being to the human community. And for Yinle, he is a local Orisha of hunting, rivers, and herbal medicine. He is also the companion of Osanyin. And finally, Shango is the Orisha of thunder. The Yoruba have a diviner called Babalawo. The diviner mediates between humans and the god Orunmila. To reach Orunmila, the diviner will go through the god Eshu. The divination process for mediating between humans and Orunmila is called Ifa. The essential sculptural object for Ifa is a divination board, upon Ifa. When in use, the board is sprinkled with dust from a special wood. The Babalawo throws 16 palm nuts to determine a configuration of 8 sets of signs. He draws the signs in the dust, then erases them. Each of the 256 configurations that can occur is known by a name and is associated with a body of oral literature. As the Babalawo chants the appropriate verses, clients interpret them to apply to their own situations. When attracting the attention of Orunmila and Eshu, the Babalawo wraps a special tapa, the Iroke, on the center of the open Ifa, and at the same time recites verses to acknowledge and honor the god Eshu, the messenger. The palm nuts used in Ifa are kept in a carved container called Agira Ifa. Fashioned of wood, or more rarely of ivory, Agira Ifa vary greatly in form and may range in height from a few inches to over a foot. Other divination paraphernalia may be stored in large, multi-compartmented, lidded containers or divination bowls called open egidia. As in most African cultures, shrines are places where human beings interact with deities and spirits. The Agbini Shango shrine in Ibadan is an example. Sculptural forms are added to the shrine as gifts to the Orisha. One extraordinarily complex and dynamic bowl, probably intended for the altar of an Orisha, was created by Olawe of Iza. We are now finishing up this installation with a brief on masquerades and masks. We will talk of only two of them: the Egungun and the Goleda mask. The most thoroughly dynamic art forms of the Yoruba are masquerades. As elsewhere in Africa, Yoruba masks are not created or perceived as static sculptural entities but as components of a larger, multimedia art of performance that includes costume, dance, music, poetry, and interaction with a participating crowd of onlookers. These masks and masquerades aid Yoruba communities in communicating with the spirit world while they entertain the living. The Egungun. It is the most widespread masquerade in Yoruba land. Myths and legends preserved in divination poetry support the belief that Egungun first appeared among the Oyo Yoruba. This dramatic Yoruba masquerade may have developed in response to ancestral celebrations of the Nupe peoples who live to the northeast of the Oyo region. Nupe ancestors are honored with spectacular masquerades consisting of moving cylinders made of white cloth, columns that rise mysteriously to tower high above the participants. Whatever its history, Egungun is particularly important in Oyo. Their Egungun celebrations take place over a period of several weeks, manifested in performances within lineage compounds and in public performances. Many Yoruba associate Egungun with the veneration of ancestors, believed capable of helping the living community, if they are properly honored. Some Egungun masquerades impersonate the spirit of the recently departed, returning to ensure that all is in order prior to making the final journey to the spirit world. In other situations, the Egungun merely appears to entertain when ancestors are venerated. Egungun, like the ancestors they are associated with, are identified with specific families. They play a regulating role in the family and serve as a link between the living and the dead. There is an air of the sacred attached to the Egungun and to the rites and celebrations of which they are a part. They are prepared for action within a sacred grove. Prayers are said, Ifa is cast, and charms are attached to the body of the masker and placed within his costume. Donning the costume, the masker is depersonalized, ritually transformed into a human repository for the spirit of the returning ancestor. When he enters a state of possession, he speaks with the voice of the deceased. The Goleda mask. The masquerades of the Goleda society are limited to the southwestern region. Goleda's origins are often attributed to the kingdom of Ketu, situated in the present Republic of Benin, and to another kingdom, Ilobi. Some suggest that Goleda evolved from celebrations performed in honor of the patron, Orisha of small children, and that the masquerade was modified in response to disputes over royal succession in these two ancient kingdoms. Today the festivals focus on the placation of the great goddess, Ayanla, and on the general well-being of the community. As we share this African art corpus, we express our deepest gratitude to great art historians like Frank Willett, Peter Galek, Dennis Duadan, and Monica Visona, whose works have formed the foundation of this story. On other online sources we also relied. That takes us to the end of our narration today. We don't take your time for granted. Thanks for listening. Keep it here for more stories like this. Kwaheri.